Hey there guys, this is Kilian Duarte from Scale Summit, and you're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi everyone, John Liebman here. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com. We're coming to you today from the 2018 NAMM show, Anaheim, California, with our special guest Kilian Duarte. Hey Kilian.
Hey there, how you doing, man?
All right, good to see you. I want to talk about you. You're doing some cool stuff. You're playing with Scale to Summit, and you've done a lot of interesting things in your career. And I want to start, though, from the beginning. You are originally from Florida, right? Deerfield Beach area?
Yeah.
So how did you become a bass player?
So, growing up, music was very prominent in my family. Not in the terms that there were musicians directly, but my father was an old school fusion fan.
Really?
And my mother.
What a cool dad.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Old school meaning Weather Report, Return to Forever, or what do you mean?
He's always been an enormous Al Di Meola fan. So through that, every Sunday morning I'd hear a lot of music. And my mother actually is a huge...
Excuse me, so you heard a lot of Anthony Jackson, I guess, right?
Yeah, and all that, all those amazing players and Jocko and all those people. And then my mother is actually a very hardcore old school prog fan. So she loves bands like Renaissance and Rush and, Yes and stuff like that.
I hope you appreciate what kind of coolness you come from with your mom and your dad.
My mom actually took me to my first Rush concert because she wanted to go see that. Her favorite Rush record.
She couldn't find a babysitter, probably, right?
Well, no, I was grown, but okay. Her favorite record was Fly By Night by them. So and then so what happened was that, middle school hits and you start getting into that phase where music starts meaning a lot more to you.
Yeah.
And I actually always wanted to be a drummer, but we lived in apartments. Financially, I couldn't have one in an apartment. But then, a friend of mine from middle school had a guitar, and I was like, nah, so I'll try bass. And then I just remember falling immediately in love with it. And then, growing up, playing and practicing as much as I could. And then I got accepted with scholarship to Berkeley when I was 18.
Well, let's back up a little bit. Who were some of your bass heroes or your bass influences once you fell in love with the instrument and dove into it?
I would want to say the classics, obviously, like Jaco Pastorius and Victor Wooten and Marcus Miller and Chris Squire when I was starting off. And then for the heavier guys like Martin Mendez from Opeth and Justin Chancellor from Tool and just a lot of people that over the years, just spoke to me, and I really always liked the way they were pushing themselves on the instrument. But yeah, I would say if I had to name a biggest influence, even though I don't sound like him, Jaco Pastorius. I think when growing up, I remember I had a book which was all his tablature for all the classic hits like Teen Town, Havana, and all those songs. And I remember using that book until the pages were completely dead, and I actually learned a bunch of the tunes, and that was where I learned. I remember one summer when I was 15, I had a cheap little Carlo Rovelli fretless, and I spent the entire summer just locked away, and that's what I did. I only played fretless, and I only learned those, and so that was, if I had to say my biggest influence would probably be him.
Well, given that book has now worn out, there's a new book that just came out not too long ago called Play Like Jaco Pastorius, and it goes into the overview, the background, the equipment, gear, his technique, his lessons, and it was written by pretty much my best friend, the guy that I admire in the mirror every morning. Play Like Jaco Pastorius. I'm sorry, you opened the door, I walked in, and you folks know I very seldom do that, but once in a while I just can't help myself. So anyway, you went to Berkeley, and that catapulted your career, and that's how you became the rock star that you are.
Thank you. So in 2006, I went there, and, I was really happy because I needed to, get out and go see to a new place, and Boston is a beautiful city, so I've been, I still live there, coincidentally, but yeah.
It's not like Deerfield Beach, Florida.
No.
Especially around December, January, February, you know what I mean?
That's the only drawback, yeah. But, so I studied with a lot of people there that, shaped me a lot, like Bruce Gertz and Matthew Garrison and Fernando Huergo and Oscar Stagnaro and a couple of people that, were just wonderful teachers and great mentors, and it was great to be around the environment. And I think the biggest, thing from that is a lot of the people I went to school with now, I see them here at NAMM are doing a lot of things, and they inspire me. I'd say my current inspiration now is my peers and people like that. But yeah, Then I graduated from Berkeley, and at the time, 2009, started playing with this guitar player named Felix Martin, who is a prominent Venezuelan, a progressive 14-string guitarist. And I was in his band for 9 years, and we released 3 records, and we toured all over the world. And it's where I, learned my chops. Like, I remember the first tour we did was 7 weeks in a minivan all over the United States. It was the roughest thing ever.
It's nice to look back on and say that I did that, but it's also nice not to be doing it.
Oh, yeah, no, like, I can say to anyone, like, they go, like, touring's hard, and I go, like, you don't know what that means. But now, especially with Scale, we tour in bandwagons and buses and stuff like that. But, so I, learned my chops through him. And then in the Boston area, I was doing general business work, weddings. I got really into theater work. So I've done local productions of Rent, Full Monty, Shrek the Musical, Lucky Stiff, Promises, and a bunch.
So you're a doubler, upright and electric.
Yes.
I did a ton of that work. I always just loved it.
I really love playing upright. I have to admit that I'm a stronger electric player, like bass guitar. But especially now, I have a band in Boston, which is a gypsy jazz trio, and so really, honing my chops live has helped me a lot. And I find that on upright, my influences are I emulate my influences a little bit more. Like, I'm really into NHOP.
Oh, my all-time favorite bass player. Yeah. I saw him with Oscar Peterson and Joe Pass about ridiculous. 1 month after I had started playing the upright bass. I had kind of heard of him. I'd seen his name on records, but oh my God, that just scared me to death. At a little club in a Hyatt Regency Hotel in Dearborn, Michigan.
That's awesome. Yeah, with him specifically.
I still haven't recovered.
With him, because on electric, I've been using 3 fingers for speed for a very long time, and he was able to translate that technique on upright. And I always look at videos of him and his attack, and I feel like my right hand, like, if someone's figured it out and someone has such a good method like he is, because he's like one of the best bass players that ever existed for that style of playing. So whenever I look at my right hand, I go like, okay, I definitely see where I just completely ripped him off, but it's he's the best, so why not?
What about in a completely different context, Billy Sheehan, who's got that 3-finger thing that he does? Yeah. Was he on your radar as well?
Billy definitely, like, for that technique, a lot of his exercises and stuff like that, I incorporated that, and I had the Billy Sheehan DVD when I was a kid, and then him and a lot of, like, really good metal players, and John Myung and stuff like that, were guys that I just did. That was another big one that I had. It was John.
Another Berkeley fellow.
Yeah, John's amazing.
Yeah, I interviewed him once or twice.
He's a really nice guy.
Yeah, he is.
A lot of that for stamina and endurance and stuff like that. Yeah, at first I was one of those purist kids growing up. I was like, I don't want to play with a pick. I want to just do fingers. So that's why I learned that. But oddly enough, in age, I actually love playing with a pick now for certain things. I just did a tour with Angel Vivaldi, and his set's all pick style. But it was fun because I learned the stamina to be able to do all that stuff finger style. But I'm loving the tone I get from pick for certain circumstances. So, that's kind of the cool thing. But yeah,
it's great. You got to be able to do it all. What's keeping you busy these days?
I've been very fortunate with joining Scale the Summit, that, like, we are now more of a writing schedule that's more fast-paced, which I like. I don't like waiting 3 years between records. So we released one last May, and we are already starting a new one. Then my other band, Ladder Math, is writing a record as well. It's done being written. We're doing pre-production, and then hopefully driving out to Ohio in the spring.
From Boston?
From Boston to go.
In a minivan with 7 guys?
But we have this friend of ours. He's a lead singer of this band, Sky Harbor, and he has a beautiful studio in Cleveland that we've been there, and he's just a really good producer, and we want to do it there. I'm doing a lot of collaboration work with a lot of different artists as well, teaching a lot, and then ramping up a lot of the local stuff that I do with the Gypsy Jazz Trio. We're going to be doing that a lot.
Tell me about that briefly. Is that like Django Reinhardt music, or what is Gypsy Jazz?
Yeah, we do all types of standards.
You have a fiddle player, or what?
Yeah, exactly. So it's the classical Django style acoustic guitar.
You play upright bass?
Violin, and I play upright. Wow. And it's a trio, and then we have vocalists. So we'll do classics, All of Me and stuff like that. But then we'll do like Swing Hitan and a lot of Django standards that
Stefan Grappelli stuff, maybe.
yeah, like stuff like that. And so it's been a lot of fun because for me, like, I mean, I grew up and I've played jazz for years, but, you know, a lot of the stuff that I learned with Bruce at Berkeley in terms of writing good, effective walking bass lines, because that's something that he was always really good at. He could write walking bass lines that were very tasteful, I always felt, and, you know, you could definitely hear, the form very easily, but it was very musical.
Yeah. I love Bruce. I love the title of one of his recent records. He's been very prolific, by the way, putting out albums. But one in particular, I like the title. It's called Eepin' and Beepin'. You familiar with that one?
I didn't see the cover for that one, but that's awesome. I'm going to definitely check that out.
That's vintage Bruce.
Yeah. And then
go ahead.
I've been just a lot of internet content that I'm working on. And then privately, not professionally, like just practicing a lot. I've been doing a lot more guitar work for artists that I've been doing, so I've been actually practicing a lot of guitar, and then my arco chops on upright is something that I've been trying to dedicate more time to.
French bow or German bow?
French, actually.
Okay, I always have to ask. I could never get comfortable with a French bow. When I pick it up, I hold it like a German bow.
What it was is that when I first got mine at 18, it was the cheapest one at Sam Ash, the first one. Well, now I'm with NS Design, and so I have a nice bow that they gave me, but at the time that was the only bow they had in the store. And so I learned that, and from what I've been told, a lot of people go like, if you switch to German, you'll stay there. But now it's like my technique is all like the frog, you know, holding the frog the way it is, and like, but yeah, it's been good. And especially with the bow that NS Design sent me, it's actually like very comfortable, and the hair quality is great.
NS Design is a great company. Make great stuff. I love particularly their upright basses. The electrics are great too. But tell me about the rest of your gear.
Yeah, so for bass guitars, I'm a Kiesel and Dorsey and use Kiesel instruments. My main basses with that are a Vanquish multi-scale, 2 Vader 6 strings, and then a JB5, which is their 5-string jazz bass model. Then I actually was honored by Jeff at this NAMM to receive one of the...
Jeff Kiesel.
Yeah, Jeff Kiesel. He made me a Zeus 4-string, which is their four headless. And then with that one, I got a PE pickup configuration because I love having at least one P bass in my arsenal to utilize that, because I love the way that sounds. And they make amazing P style pickups, so like if anyone ever wants like that, I would actually go to Kiesel for that. But that one, and then I have a fretless that is currently I'm actually having a friend of mine, she's painting it. So they sent me the raw body wood and the neck, and then she's going to do art on it, which I think is really cool.
That is cool. What about the you mentioned NS Design bow, but you also play their upright basses?
Yeah. I very much love my NS Design. It's an NXT. It's their 4-string. But even though the NXTs are the more affordable ones, I end up thinking that it sounds incredible. I have band leaders that come to me all the time, but it's the charcoal gray NXT 4-string. That's my one that I use for everything.
How about strings?
Strings GHS. For the upright, I mean, I never changed the strings on the upright, but that is a set of GHS upright.
You have to change them eventually. They last a lot longer, but every couple times a lifetime, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, but since I've had it, the strings have like stayed perfectly fine, no deadage, which is kind of the nice thing about GHS. And then with the Kiesels, all of them have GHS on them. So the progressives, that's what I like using.
Okay, and I think you mentioned some effects or some amps or something.
Yeah, so for my main tone center for everything I do is from Dark Glass Electronics. I use their Microtubes 900 head. So that's like primarily where a lot of my tone and stuff comes in. And I use their cabinet as well, their 410 cab. And then I have a smaller 210 cabinet of the same brand that I use for the jazz gigs, which is kind of awesome because people would think Dark Glass, they make like metal amps, but actually the clean channel on it is impeccable. And since it gives me so much headroom, I just keep the volume at like 2 or 3, and I'm able to run my upright through it, and it sounds just as good as actually a lot better than previous brands I've used. And it's people think it's just a metal amp, but the clean channel on it's spectacular and very transparent. So.
Dark Glass has really risen in prominence the last few years too. How about the future, Kilian? What else would you like to do that you haven't accomplished yet? You've got a lot of energy. I can see that.
Just keeping this trajectory going. This year's been the busiest year for me in my career. I ended up from last November to like the beginning of December, I did 5 tours all over the U.S. with 3 different bands. And it was the most I've ever gigged while traveling. And, I started to get more students, and finally it's just the honest reality of it. A lot of times in your 20s, when you're starting off trying to make a career in music, you need a day job. You need things to supplement that have nothing to do with music, and it's, for anyone that's ever had to do that, it's a little soul-crushing at times, and especially when you have to take a job that you can leave to go on tour, because, it's sometimes you have to work at Whole Foods and, do this stuff. But over the past year and a half, I've been able to make music my primary way of living, and slowly but surely all the seeds that I planted in my 20s that were just, paying, absurd dues by, touring in the middle of February in a minivan, doing all that stuff. Slowly they're paying off, and I want to just keep it that I'm a working bassist, and I get to do what I enjoy doing. So that's really, if everything keeps going this direction and keeps going up, then I'm a happy guy.
Well, good for you. You got to do what you got to do. Yes, I'm glad it's paying off. Last question, Kilian.
No worries.
What would you be if you weren't a bass player? Something outside of music.
You know what? I actually do think this a lot. I would want to be a history professor or an economist of some sort. I've always found those two things. History specifically was always my favorite subject in high school, and so I feel like if I didn't do that, I would want to be one of, a history professor on the college level if it were up to me, and I could dedicate more time to.
Is there a particular period of history that you like?
I always found Egyptology to be absolutely fascinating, but in general, anthropological studies are just fascinating, and you can learn a lot about human nature, and I always think people think they start talking about political science and ideologies, but if you look at a history book, it'll teach you a lot more about human nature than a lot of other things. So I've always found that, yeah.
When my son was, 11th grade or something, I said, "Tell me your schedule." He says, "Well, I'm taking history." I said, "Oh, yeah, what period?" He says, "Second period."
That's funny, yeah.
Just had to throw that in because you reminded me of that. Gave me a chuckle. Well, Kilian Duarte, it's great getting to know you, sitting down with you, and congratulations on all your success. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm really glad things are working out the way they are, and we look forward to hearing and seeing lots more from you. With our good friend Kilian Duarte at the 2018 NAMM Show, Anaheim, California, I'm John Liebman. You're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com.